Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Mages, here with LVX777. Today we're going to continue with the next chapter of the book titled Samkhya Darshan. In this chapter, we're going to cover bondage and liberation. Previously, we talked about Purusha and its relationship with Prakriti. For a manner of speaking, for lack of better words, we can say that Purusha relates to what we know of as the soul, or the highest aspect of our individual nature, really even beyond the individual nature. Because if we're talking about this over soul, right, this most high, it goes beyond any implication of individuality. It goes into a level of totality. So we've got Purusha, which represents the soul, and then we've got Prakriti, which represents nature, which represents everything that is expressed, everything that can be observed, that can be experienced. Everything that fits under that category would be Prakriti. Purusha would be everything else. Within Prakriti, we know that her substance operates through a percentage of one of the three gunas, whether it is activity, inertia, or an overcoming balance. So today we're going to talk about bondage and liberation, because what we learned from yesterday's chapter, Theories of Manifestation, what we learned is that when Prakriti comes into the proximity of Purusha, that's when her harmony and her balance becomes upset. Again, for lack of better words, the harmony and the balance becomes imbalanced, and now creation and manifestation begins, because creation and manifestation do not happen when Prakriti is in a state of balance. When she's in a state of balance, when she's in a state of harmony, there isn't any change. Everything is in its potential state. So what happens is when that potential state gets within the proximity of this soul, Purusha, what we find is that imbalance occurs and then manifestation begins. A good way to remember that is like how you have a seed, which is the potential of a tree. Within that seed is not a miniature tree, but the prototype and the ingredients that would be required to create a tree. And the tree doesn't come out of that seed until the seed enters a state of imbalance. That happens when it encounters the elements. That happens when the seed is planted in the soil and it receives water, it receives fire from the sun, it receives air and all the other nutrients that it needs, so that that imbalance begins what is called manifestation. The tree now sprouts out of that seed. Likewise, Prakriti in her absolute form is like a seed prototype. When she encounters consciousness, that balance is now upset and it becomes the manifest world that we are accustomed to. So, next we're going to talk about bondage and liberation. Because the thing is, our experience as individual people, at the very root, is Purusha, is Atman, is the soul. But it can kind of seem like a paradox because the soul is not within Prakriti, it's not here. The soul isn't here in this manifest experience. Yet, for some reason, we feel bound to this place. We feel like we're trapped, like we're caught, like we cannot escape this web or this cycle or this wheel. So, this chapter should hope to answer a lot of the questions on that subject from a higher academic and understood perspective. So, I hope that you guys are ready. I hope that you have the book by now. Come on. And I hope that you at least read it, and if not, are prepared to read it. Get your highlighters. I appreciate everybody for being here. Pablo X69, peace. Society Ejects, good to see you, bro. Nuru, peace. Al Dicky, good evening, my friend, good evening. Society Eject says, yep, I was looking at a video about Samkhya, and they were saying when you truly release all attachments, Prakriti will no longer manifest for you. Yeah, and you'll see that in the Samkhya Karika, the extra book that you bought in regards to this. Hecate, good evening. Hecate, I got that book like immediately. You must have sent that 1 day shipping. Thank you again. I appreciate you. So I've got everything I need. Also, I got an idea, maybe somewhat of an announcement I'll probably mention it a little bit later on. But I always talk about NLP, but on this channel as a group, we never really went into NLP. So I wonder if that would be something that people would be interested in. I don't know. Let's see. MC Maestro, peace, my friend. MC Maestro says the balance of Prakriti being upset by the contact of Purusha reminds me of the movie Hancock. Yeah, yeah. Oh, Will Smith. Kev Rose, SS God, peace, peace. Unicorn style. Naturally natured. Good evening, good evening. MC Maestro says keep the NLP sauce on the DL. I might. But I think some people might be interested, and I think that I could benefit certainly by going over it like I'm going over the Samkhya information. I don't know. We'll see. But let's get into Samkhya. Let's get into this chapter about bondage and liberation. Good stuff. All right. So, let's turn this camera around. Let's get it started. Dreamwise, peace, my brother, peace. What would you guys think if we started going over some NLP books? You think that would be a good idea, or would that be reckless? Let me know what you think. Don't get me wrong, we're still moving straight into mystical Kabbalah, but I don't know. I think now that we've covered a lot of the foundational self work stuff from a yoga perspective, maybe it would be beneficial to go over some of the NLP information. Puppy. Oh, good. So, naturally natured, it looks like Hecate got in touch with you. I sent a message to you, but I think you might have been asleep when I messaged you. But looks like room 304 is on and popping. I certainly made it there. MC Maestro says the beginner stuff like Essential Guide. I'm trying to make my bread from NLP. Hey man, this is a massive, massive blue ocean, even still. That's all how you spin it. Al Dickey says, I'm down and I have some books already referred from you and the group. Awesome. Puppy. You're gonna have to settle down if you're gonna sit next to me. I'm gonna need you to be Sattvic, puppy, not Rajasic. All right, let's get it popping. Bondage and liberation. All right, so let's dive right into it without further ado. Bondage and liberation. There are 3 forms of suffering. 3 forms of suffering, and we know what they are, right? Internal, external, and cosmic. So, there are three forms of suffering due to which an idea arises in Purusha that it is bound. Whenever the three gunas are active, there is disharmony, and dealing with disharmony causes struggle. This conflict and suffering has been divided into three categories of Adhibhautika, Adhyatmika, and Adhidaivika. The first kind of pain stems from material causes. The second comes from personal inner causes, and the third from cosmic or divine influences. When Purusha, being the conscious nature, identifies with the three classifications of suffering, it appears bound. Prakriti is the cause of all sufferings, but does not identify with them because Prakriti does not have consciousness. We interact with the pains and pleasures of the world according to the inherited or innate predispositions, the bhavas, and end up either further entangled in karma or detached from it. So there are 2 points to remember right there. Number one, we've already noticed this in the book earlier, and you might see this in some other books on Samkhya, but there's three types of suffering. There's suffering that is from material causes, there's suffering that's caused from personal inner causes, and there's suffering from cosmic or divine influences. So we're talking about stuff that's in your environment, stuff that's in your head, and then things that are astrological and out of your control. Those are the three main types of suffering. The other thing to remember is that Prakriti is the cause of all suffering, because without Prakriti, we wouldn't have the cosmos or the body or the mind. Also remember that Prakriti does not identify with that suffering. Why? Because Prakriti doesn't have consciousness. And we interact with these pains and these pleasures because what we do know from psychology is that the unconscious mind is programmed to gravitate towards pleasure and to run away from pain. We're programmed to do that. So it's according to your inherent character, your inherent bhava, your predisposition. That's going to be a major factor in whether you're getting further entangled into karma or further detached from karma. It depends on your inherent character. Now, of course, it can be overridden, it can be fixed, harmonized, but of course, that would take more work. The best thing to do is to understand your character and work with your strengths. So, through the predisposition towards virtuous nature, dharma, one ascends to higher planes of existence. Through inappropriate or vicious behavior, adharma, one descends to lower planes. Through knowledge comes release. By its reverse, avidya or ignorance, one comes bound. So in other words, by virtuous nature and virtuous behavior, one ascends to the higher planes. Through inappropriate behavior, one descends to lower planes. Through knowledge, you can become liberated. Through ignorance, you become bound. That's just good common sense right there. That doesn't take a rocket scientist or a yogi to really pick out, right? Thank you, Dreamwise. When Purusha is freed from the influences of Mahat, Buddhi, Ahamkara, and Manas, it is Chaitana, pure consciousness. So again, we've learned before that Antakarana, the inner instrument, consists of Buddhi, Ahamkara, and Manas, right? The inner instrument consists of this higher self, it consists of ego, and it consists of the body, mind, right? But when Purusha is free from those three limitations, it then becomes pure consciousness. However, when Purusha comes into contact with Prakriti, it forgets its own nature. Due to this ignorance, Purusha identifies with intellect, ego, and mind, and begins to believe it is not different from the experiences it has in the realm of Prakriti. So we've got this soul, we've got this higher self, this supreme aspect. But what happens is when Purusha identifies with Prakriti, with nature, with the manifest dimension, ignorance happens. It forgets who he is. The soul forgets who he is. Just like in the beginning of The Path of Poverty and Nivriti, he talks about Hotel Earth, right? In the beginning of this book, he talks about the traveler who's traveling to the city of light, but makes a stop on Earth. And the longer he stays on Earth, the more he forgets his mission and who he is. And he begins to get wrapped up and tangled up with everything that's happening on that Hotel Earth. A guide and a messenger had to come and pull him out of his sleep. It's the same process. So we begin to identify with Prakriti. We begin to identify with nature. We begin to become influenced by everything in our environment, to the fact and the point that we begin to believe that we are a part of this play. Imagine being an actor in a movie, and the longer that you guys are filming the movie, the more you forget that it's a movie and you start believing it's real. That's what has happened with the soul. He says, due to this ignorance, Purusha identifies with intellect, ego, and mind, and begins to believe it is not different from the experiences it has in the realm of Prakriti. That's everybody. That's every single person. We begin to believe that we are no different from the experiences we're having in this world. We believe that we are those experiences. This association of Purusha with Prakriti causes bondage through false identification. It is like reacting to a dream. While dreaming that somebody is chasing you with a gun, you experience fear and anxiety. But upon awakening, you realize it was just a dream. The nature of Purusha is totally conscious, which can be related to the state of wakefulness. However, when Purusha interacts with Prakriti, the consciousness becomes dissipated. So again, imagine it's like an actor, and the longer that the actor is performing in the movie, the more and more he forgets that he's an actor in a play. And the more he starts to identify with the movie and believe the movie is real. Or like he says here, the nature of Purusha is totally conscious. So when we talk about Purusha, this soul, this highest aspect, the most high, whatever you want to call it, Purusha is totally conscious, 100% conscious, which can be related to the state of wakefulness, being awake. But when this Purusha, when the soul interacts with nature, when Purusha interacts with Prakriti, that same consciousness becomes dissipated, scattered. Right? The same way that you feel when you've got 10 things to do and you don't make any progress on any one thing because you're bouncing left and right to each different topic. While you feel like you're getting stuff done, you're actually getting nothing done and just stressing yourself out. While sitting alone in a room, you become introspective, absorbed in your thoughts and nature. But when somebody walks in, you come out of that state. You look at the other person and you start communicating, forgetting about yourself. The same thing happens with Purusha. While Purusha is independent, it is perfectly at peace with itself. But when Prakriti comes before Purusha, it begins to interact with Prakriti. At that time, the awareness is dissipated. And then identification begins due to the association with Prakriti. And then identification begins due to association with Prakriti. Purusha loses its self-consciousness and begins to observe and react to the nature of Prakriti. Because of this loss of awareness and self-identification, Purusha thinks, I am the bhakta, the enjoyer, and begins to identify personally with the experiences of buddhi, manas, and ahamkara, which are manifestations of Prakriti. So again, as soul, as Purusha comes into contact with Prakriti, with nature, it's almost as if the concentration is now scattered. And as the awareness becomes focused on Prakriti or focused on nature or manifestation, at the same time, Purusha is forgetting the awareness of itself. And it's this awareness that animates Prakriti. Remember, Prakriti is unconscious. Prakriti is not sentient. So notice how this awareness is transferring from soul to matter. It's not that the matter is alive, it's that the awareness of soul is being transferred into the matter. It says here, interaction and then identification begins due to the association with Prakriti. Purusha loses its self-consciousness and begins to observe and react to the nature of Prakriti. Because of this loss of awareness and self-identification, Purusha thinks, I am the enjoyer, and begins to identify personally with the experiences of Buddhi, Manas, and Ahamkara, which are manifestations of Prakriti. Society Eject says, Mr. Soul getting influenced by everything around him, overindulging in sensual pleasures, dissipated. Yep. Dissipated. The subtle body and the body born of mother and father, together with the objects made of the gross elements, are specific. Of these, the subtle body is constant and continues to exist from one life to the next, whereas the gross body born of parents perishes. What's he talking about right here? Does anybody know when he's talking about this subtle body, sukshma, and dense body? What is he talking about? This gross body and this subtle body? Society Eject says the koshas. Exactly. Had to run and grab my Tot with Shooty here. So yeah, exactly. He's talking about the koshas. And specifically, he's talking about the Annamaya kosha, which is the gross body, the physical body. And then he's talking about the Pranamaya kosha, which is the pranic body, the etheric body. Right? So of course we've got these 5 different bodies. Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manamaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, and Anandamaya kosha. This is on page 72 of Tot with Shooty. But yeah, that's what he's talking about here. So he says that the body born of mother and father, that passes away, it dies. But the etheric body continues from lifetime to lifetime, right? I'll read this again. The subtle body and the body born of mother and father, that's the 2 different bodies. The subtle body, which is the etheric. The body born of mother and father, that's the physical body. He says, together with the objects made of the gross elements, these are specific, right? So everything that you do construct and create and put together and form with your physical body, those things are specific, right? Because they're made out of the elements. Also the physical body, which is made of food, that's specific. And the etheric body is specific. Not the astral, not the mental, not the causal. He says, of these 3 specific bodies, the subtle body is constant. So that means that everything that you do and create in this world is not constant. And the physical body is not constant. But this etheric body, this subtle body, it's constant and it continues to exist from one life to the next. Whereas the gross body born of parents, it perishes. So when people talk about reincarnation and they talk about immortality, it absolutely does not happen with the physical body. So when people talk about reincarnation and things like that, it's not about the physical body. It never has been. At this point, Purusha becomes a witness to the experience of pain, pleasure, and indifference due to identification with the effects of Prakriti and its Trigunatmika nature. Remember, Trigunatmika means under the influence of the 3 gunas, right? The natural and inherent consciousness of Purusha recedes further from awareness as Purusha identifies with the dance of Prakriti. The natural and inherent consciousness of Purusha recedes further from awareness as Purusha identifies with the dance of Prakriti. So again, the longer that Purusha soul identifies with Prakriti, the longer that process happens, the more that Purusha begins to forget itself. It says here that the consciousness recedes further from awareness, literally going into a type of sleep. The soul goes into a type of sleep the longer that it interacts with nature. Oh, yeah. That identity gives rise to the feeling of bondage. I am limited. I am confined. I am only seeing, knowing, understanding, and experiencing that which is being shown to me by Prakriti. Due to the influence of the three gunas, Purusha experiences bondage, and the ability to discriminate is lost. Now the question arises as to why Purusha, being conscious, is affected by the role that Prakriti plays. This can be answered in the following way. Parents become happy when their children do something positive and constructive, and unhappy when they do something destructive or negative. Although the parents are different to their offspring, they respond to the activities of their children because of an emotional relationship or connection. Similarly, a relationship exists between Purusha and Prakriti, and therefore Purusha is not able to separate its own role from the role of Prakriti and begins to think, I am not different to the intelligence which guides Prakriti. In this way, Purusha becomes totally identified with Buddhi and forgets that Buddhi is the product of Prakriti. This wrong identification or lack of discrimination is the cause of bondage. It is similar to parents identifying with the suffering of their child. Although the parents are not suffering, still they sit beside the child's bed, knowing they cannot do anything to alleviate the suffering. I think that should make easy sense for those of you who are parents, or for those of you that have someone that you deeply care about. It's almost automatic when there's someone in your life that you deeply care about. If they're going through something that is wonderful, like if they've made an achievement or they've created something or done something that you're proud of, you automatically celebrate with them. You feel happy for them, right? Likewise, if they go through something that causes suffering, if they go through a loss, right, you automatically kind of feel bad and sympathize with them because you love them so much. It's not even your life. Yet because you're attached to them and their well-being, when they go up, you go up. When they go down, you go down. That's the same relationship he's describing here between the soul and matter, between Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha isn't here. He's not doing anything. But because the awareness of Purusha is becoming more and more focused on nature and matter, this fluctuation and this up and down dance of drama that nature's going through, Purusha is identifying with it, just like a parent identifies with the suffering of their child or identifies with the celebration of their child. I think it makes easy sense. Society Eject says, yep, or like a marriage. Okay, I can see that also like a marriage. If your partner is going through something great, you feel great with them. If they're going through something horrible, you're feeling horrible with them. Notice the attachment here, right? Notice this connection. And notice that this is also divine, because this is exactly what soul does with matter. Now, that doesn't say it's a good thing or a bad thing, but understand this is the very reason why we feel like we're stuck here, why we feel like we're stuck within karma. Will Trent, peace and welcome, my friend. So that's bondage right there. That's the concept of bondage in a nutshell. Of course, we're going to get a little bit deeper than that, but I think that that's an easy example to understand. As your child suffers, as your loved one suffers, as your partner suffers, you can't help but suffer with them. As they celebrate, as they have victory and successes, you can't help but celebrate with them. It's natural. The same thing is happening in the relationship between soul and matter. So now let's talk about means of liberation. According to Samkhya, knowledge, or gyan, is the medium of liberation. Knowledge here means to know the difference between being and non-being. In Samkhya, final liberation is not attainable through karma, because liberation attained through karma would only be of an impermanent nature. So Samkhya says that jnana, wisdom, is the medium of mukti, liberation. At night, while walking on the road, you may see a rope and mistake it for a snake. But by shining a light on it, you realize it was not a snake, but a rope. Similarly, through the light of wisdom, you can distinguish between being and non-being. This wisdom is known as samyaka gyan, ultimate knowledge, which means balanced, integrated awareness of Purusha and Prakriti. You can also notice here that that sounds a whole lot similar to the concept of buddhi. And remember last night in the previous chapter, he was talking about how the main quality of buddhi is discrimination, right? Discrimination of what? Discrimination from reality and unreality, right? Same thing he's talking about here. So in truth, becoming more and more acclimated with this aspect of buddhi gets you closer to the soul. Realization, knowledge and realization of what is being and non-being, what is real and what is not real, that's called ultimate knowledge. That's called samyaka jnana, which means balanced, integrated awareness of Purusha and Prakriti. So notice, it's not even awareness of anything specific. It's not talking about being aware of a certain deity or a certain concept of an astral plane or any type of concrete information. It's more, instead of the content, it's talking about here the context, understanding a context of existence, having the discernment to be able to distinguish what is real and what is not real. This is not a common trait. You might be hard-pressed to find somebody who can actually tell the difference between reality and unreality. Including yourself. If you examine the contents of your thoughts, just how much of what's in your mind is causing emotional disturbance for you. And when you analyze those things that are causing emotional disturbance for you, how much of those things are real and how much of them are not real? And when I say not real, I mean how much have you added to it to make it more than it actually is, right? The tough questions. Someone must ask them. This knowledge is not a product of the mind, because the mind is an evolute of Prakriti. In Samkhya's theory of evolution, Manas is an evolute of the Sattvic Ahamkara, and whatever knowledge you have through Manas will always be within the limits of Sattvic Ahamkara. It won't even take you as far as Mahat. How do you transcend Ahamkara, ego, right? How do you transcend Ahamkara and Mahat in order to have that final knowledge where you can differentiate between reality and unreality? How do you do that? Samkhya says that ultimate knowledge cannot be obtained through the mind and senses. It cannot be obtained through the mind and senses. It can only be attained through control and mastery of the senses and the mind. Lance Benefield says, could this also represent the connection between Mahamaya, the illusion, and her son Buddha, who brought balance to reality? It absolutely relates to that. You can even tell by the words. You can even tell by the words that you were using there. So we're talking about the same thing. Maya. Buddhi. Now again, this knowledge is not a product of the mind. Why? Because the mind is an evolute of Prakriti. So you can't even rely on your five senses and your ego, because these are things that belong to Prakriti. They're not even, those are things that are not real. The body is not real and the mind is not real. And I say not real, sure, it feels real in the moment, but eventually it's going to decay and fade away and become completely erased. Completely erased. Now, in the face of certain things that are eternal, the mind and the body don't exist. They were always just an idea. So, knowledge is not a product of the mind. And Samkhya says that the ultimate knowledge cannot be obtained through the mind and the senses. Again, because they are products of Prakriti, products of nature. It can only be attained through control and mastery of the senses and the mind. They have to be transcended to attain this level of understanding. In order to accomplish this mastery, there was a book that we started reading but didn't really go too far in. Hopefully you might have, but in order to obtain this mastery, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is based on Samkhya, even the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is based on Samkhya. I can't believe it. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is based on Samkhya, has propagated the eightfold path of Ashtanga Yoga, which is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Manan is contemplation. Nididhyasana is repeated meditation. Now here's an interesting thing here. We actually learned about Nididhyasana with the last book. What is it? So Nididhyasana is repeated meditation. Specifically, Nididhyasana is repeated meditation on the 4 Mahavakyas. Do you guys remember that from the previous book? In Gyan Yoga, he gave us a list of these 4 Mahavakyas. And the meditation on those 4 is what Swami Sivananda defines as Nididhyasana. You can look that up for yourself. Swami Sivananda says that Nididhyasana is repeated meditation on the 4 Mahavakyas. I mean, hell, you can look this up on Wikipedia and see that. But these 4 Mahavakyas, in case you don't know, are: I am the higher consciousness. You are that. My soul is the higher consciousness. Brahman is knowledge and realization. Page 10, Jnana Yoga. So, Manan is contemplation. Nididhyasana is repeated meditation. Samkhya maintains that repeated contemplation and practice are necessary in order to attain the highest knowledge, to know the difference between being and non-being, and to re-establish Purusha in its own true identity, or Swabhava. This can be attained through Ashtanga Yoga, which provides the path for contemplation and practice. In this way, Ashtanga Yoga becomes a method for the liberation of Purusha. In the state of liberation, new gunas do not emerge or become active. Rather, Samya Avastha, the balanced state of the gunas, is attained. In this state of liberation, new gunas do not emerge or become active. Rather, Samya Avastha, the balanced state of the gunas, is attained. Then Prakriti ceases to manifest and Purusha becomes self-aware. Prakriti ceases to manifest and Purusha becomes self-aware. So what I'm learning here that I did not understand before reading this page again is that we've got Purusha, which is pure consciousness, and Prakriti, which is insentient. And we've got this awareness that is traveling. That makes me think of what was said here about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, right? Like say we're looking at Ahamkara. We've got the Sattvic Ahamkara, which produces Manas and the Indriyas. Then we've got Tamasic Ahamkara, which produces the 5 elements and the 5 primal essences, right? But there's not a Rajasic Ahamkara. As a matter of fact, what he said last night in the previous chapter was that the Rajasic aspect of Ahamkara is traveling back and forth. He says it's vitalizing the two ends of the spectrum. So the Rajasic nature is going back and forth between the Sattvic aspect and the Tamasic aspect. So now I think I'm actually seeing here what's happening here. We've got Purusha on one end, which would represent the Sattvic end of the relationship. And we've got Prakriti on the other end, which would represent the Tamasic end of the relationship. So it seems that awareness or something like it would be the Rajasic element that is cycling between ultimate consciousness and complete non-sentience. That's pretty cool. So it looks like the work that we're actually doing is withdrawing this awareness or something like it from the state of tamas, which is being focused on Prakriti, and pulling it out of and back into Purusha. Does that vibe or resonate? Did anybody else pick that up? Because I think that light bulb just came on for me on the last page. Well, who knows? I'm sure I'm right. But like I said, I had this book for like a year. So maybe if you meditated on some more, some of these things might become clear. I mean, I don't know. I can only go by what you guys say in the chat. So, what he said here was, Ashtanga Yoga becomes a method for the liberation of Purusha. In the state of liberation, new gunas do not emerge or become active. Rather, Samya Avastha, the balanced state of the gunas, is attained. Then Prakriti ceases to manifest and Purusha becomes self-aware. Just as we wake up from a dream, heave a sigh of relief and say, thank God that was only a dream. In the same way, at the time of liberation, Purusha becomes self-aware and realizes, oh, I am free. I was under the hypnosis of Prakriti. In that state of hypnosis, I was identifying with the evolutes of Prakriti, but now I realize that I am free. Just like that. No dramatic fanfare graduation, you just wake up. I love it. Love it. Naturally Nature says, can you repeat, Travis? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I wanted to know if anyone else maybe came to the same conclusion. And this is based off of what was said in the chapter yesterday. But basically what he mentioned was that there's the Sattvic aspect. And there's the Rajasic aspect, right? Now, according to this book, if you were to go back to page 51, like just to look at the chart, we're currently reading on page 67, but if you got the book and you go to page 51, you'll see this chart. And basically the same thing right here. Notice Ahamkara. We've got Sattvic Ahamkara, we got Tamasic Ahamkara, and we know that Sattvic is the liberated, harmonized, and balanced aspect. Tamasic is the inert, dead, decaying, very slow, dormant, still, stiff, not moving aspect. And what we notice about what is said here is that everything that exists within Prakriti is going to be expressed by one of those three gunas, right? So there's a sattvic buddhi, rajasic buddhi, tamasic buddhi. There's a sattvic ahamkara, rajasic ahamkara, tamasic ahamkara. And everything that is contained within Prakriti is going to be predominantly sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. Now, if you notice here, what is shown is that this is cosmic ego. And ahamkara is that function that separates and individuates and labels and confines and says this is that and this is different and this is separate and this is different and this is that. So that's what's happening at this level. And on the tamasic end of the spectrum, when that slicing and splicing is happening, we get the 5 tanmatras and we get the 5 elements, the 5 gross, dense elements, right? We get earth, water, fire, air, space, and things that behave like it physically. On a higher end of the spectrum, right, physically, then on a higher end of the spectrum, etherically and above, we get these subtle elements of hearing, touching, seeing, tasting, smelling, right? All that stuff happening over here. Peace, Louis. So again, ahamkara, this is simply the aspect that is separating and identifying and individuating. Now, because it is an evolutive prakriti, it has to express either predominantly tamasically, rajasically, or sattvically. So, again, like I was saying, on the tamasic end of the spectrum, this is where we're getting the 5 gross elements and the 5 subtle elements. Now, on the sattvic side, notice what's happening on the sattvic side of the same function. On the sattvic side, instead of getting the 5 elements and the 5 things to be sensed, because remember, those are tamasic, those are dense, hard, inert. On the sattvic side, what we're actually getting is what we call manas, or the analytical process, our mind. So we've got the 10 indriyas, the karmendriyas and the jnanendriyas, which are the 5 senses and the 5 organs of action and the 5 organs of knowledge. Speech, hands, feet, sex organ, excretory organ, ears, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose. The interesting thing is that these 2 are the sensory organs and manipulating organs. But on the tamasic side, we have things to be sensed and things to be manipulated. You see that? So on one end, this is all the same level here. But on one end, we've got the tamasic expression, which is things to be experienced and things to be manipulated. But on the sattvic aspect, we've got the experiencing organs and the manipulating organs. But notice here, there's not a rajasic ahamkara evolute chain. Because what he said here is that the rajasic aspect of ahamkara is that aspect of ourselves which is oscillating between the 2. Rajas, fire, oscillating, moving. So, likewise, what I was saying is, it appears that the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti is in the same way. Prakriti being nature, being the tamasic aspect of existence, or even the tamasic aspect of Brahman. Prakriti is things that can be experienced and things to be manipulated. And quite possibly, Purusha would be the sattvic aspect. 2 ends of the pole. But it seems that awareness is that rajasic element, and that's what we're actually working with here. Because as we are seeing in this chapter so far, it's that awareness that's being transferred from Purusha to Prakriti. The more that Purusha interacts with Prakriti, the more that soul interacts with nature, it's almost as if that awareness becomes more and more confined, stuck, and trapped in nature. But the process of yoga is one of the sciences that allow for this awareness to become liberated from that entrapment, from that entanglement. I hope that was more clear that time around. Society Eject says, I was under the hypnosis of Prakriti, the induction of a state of consciousness in which a person apparently loses the power of voluntary action and is highly responsive to suggestion or direction. And what a terrible state to be in if the hypnotizer is themselves not even alive. Well, maybe that was just for me. Let's keep going. Oh, I am free. I was under the hypnosis of Prakriti. In that state of hypnosis, I was identifying with the evolutes of Prakriti. But now I realize that I am free. The state of liberation means the destruction of ignorance, desire, and vice, as well as the removal of virtue, because virtue is sattvic. Zaire Anu, peace, peace. Dragon style. Liberation is a state of total cessation of activity in the realm of the gunas. Liberation is a state of total cessation of activity in the realm of the gunas. When those gunas are no longer out of balance, they're no longer active, that is liberation. In other words, you've transcended from the manifest dimension to the unmanifest. Because again, as we learned from the previous chapter, in the unmanifest, right here on page 47, right, that's that level of Prakriti that is balanced and harmonized, and the gunas are not active. Liberation is a state of total cessation of activity in the realm of the gunas. Samkhya does not consider liberation to be blissful or even enjoyable, but just the absence of suffering. Nobody said it was going to be paradise except the pastor at the church. Liberation is a state of total cessation of activity in the realm of the gunas. Samkhya does not consider liberation to be blissful or even enjoyable, but just the absence of suffering. In other traditions like Vedanta, liberation is said to be Sat Chidananda, truth, consciousness, bliss. But Samkhya says it is the total cessation of all activity. Once all activity ceases, there is no bliss, because Ananda is an evolute of Sattva. And the state of liberation is Trigunatita, a state beyond the three gunas. So again, this is another way of saying that when you reach this state of consciousness where Purusha is in totality, it's not really something that can be described with the common language that we use, because it's not an experience within the manifest dimension at all. Process of liberation. Samkhya describes the concept of mukti or moksha, liberation from the cycle of birth and death, and mentions two related states. The first is Jivanmukti. As soon as the self realizes the difference between Purusha and Prakriti and merges into its own nature, it becomes free. But Jivanmukti, the body continues to live, because the past karmas are not destroyed at this stage. The karmas accumulated from the past have to be gradually discharged, so the body remains. Consider that. There's a stage called Jivanmukti, right? And in this stage of Jivanmukti, the individual realizes the difference between Purusha and Prakriti, and that's the ultimate goal. To realize reality and unreality, to realize truth and untruth, to realize it, right? Because nobody knows that. But once that stage is reached and the individual merges back into Purusha, the individual does become free, does become liberated. But here's the difference. In this state of Jivanmukti, peace, MC Maestro, have a good night. In this state of Jivanmukti, the body keeps going, the body keeps living, right? Why? Because the body is actually where the karma is stored. The body is actually composed of the elements, and the elements are what contains the karma. So while the soul has been liberated, the body has to continue to finish its duty. Sounds familiar? The body continues to live because the past karmas are not destroyed at this stage. The karmas accumulated from the past have to be gradually discharged, so the body remains. I sometimes wonder if that has happened to a certain person who used to do lectures. But hey, maybe that's way out there. Maybe that's way out there. Nah, I always knew that that's what happened to him. Always. This concept isn't anything that really would dawn on this person's audience, so of course, no one would say it, but like a potter's wheel, it takes time for the rotation or cycles of life to gradually slow down and stop. The momentum accumulated, there we go. The momentum accumulated in the past by the rotating wheel of karma carries on, although the Purusha is separate or free. Interesting. Very interesting. Not a bad way to go either. Through the attainment of perfect discriminating knowledge, dharma and the rest, the 7 predispositions, become devoid of their causal efficacy. Yet one continues to be invested with the body due to the force of latent dispositions, samskaras, just like the potter's wheel continues to rotate due to the momentum transferred to it by the potter. So it only makes sense. You know. So it really helps to have a little bit of maturity with this stuff, because nothing is like just magically resolved with fairies and butterflies. Everything has to carry out its process. So, although the consciousness is free in Jivanmukta, the body and other attributes carry on with the momentum of the past karmas until those karmas are totally dissolved. Further births may be necessary to complete that karma. Some believes that even after being liberated, one may be reborn to fulfill past karmas, but still have a liberated mind. For example, there is the story of Jada Bharata, a great king who did sadhana and attained moksha. Afterwards, he took several births in order to exhaust the residual karmas. In each birth, his mind was totally detached from the body, but still the subtle body had to go through its own processes until the karmas accumulated by its past bodies were finished. Makes me think here also about maybe even, because check this out, and I know some people are sensitive, but don't get sensitive, because this is deeper than like any person. He says his mind was totally detached from the body, but still the subtle body had to go through its own processes until the karmas accumulated by its past bodies were finished. What if, maybe even some children who are born are simply related to a soul, or I should say a subtle body, that is exhausting its karma because it's already finished with the work. And maybe the karma is transferred onto the grieving parents. Who knows? Why do bad things happen to good people? The second concept is Videhamukti, where the accumulated karmas are totally annihilated. In this case, the body dies and the liberated soul remains in the bodiless state. In the absence of karma, there is no further rebirth for the Videhamukta unless one so chooses. Therefore, Purusha is never really bound, nor is it ever liberated, nor does it transmigrate. It is only Prakriti who in her various manifestations is bound, liberated, and transmigrates. Purusha is never really bound, nor is it ever liberated, nor does it transmigrate. It is only Prakriti who in her various manifestations is bound, liberated, and transmigrates. Although Purusha is never really affected by the attributes of Prakriti, it still identifies with the transformations which Prakriti brings about. For example, you do not see your own face until you look into the mirror. At that time you say, "So that is what I look like," and you form an image of yourself. Afterwards, if you don't look into the mirror again, you retain that impression of yourself. Similarly, Purusha is never involved with the manifest forms, but due to association with Prakriti, it is caught in the wheel of life and death because of identification. Does that make sense? Even now, if your consciousness was liberated due to contemplation and meditation, and you were to enter samadhi, still the body would have to fulfill its span of life. Sounds like it might take a while for Purusha to erase the concept of being an individual incarnation. The body contains those images and impressions which hold it together. Sounds like the storehouse of images, the storehouse of memory. Whoops. Storehouse of images, storehouse of memory. Right? The etheric plane, Yasad. So remember what was just said about 2 or 3 pages ago. The subtle body remains even after the physical body. There's a subtle body that transfers from one body to the next body. The storehouse of memory, Chitta. The storehouse of images, Yasad. The etheric plane. And I'll read that example again, because the moon is often represented by a mirror. The etheric plane is represented by a mirror because it's through the etheric plane that we're able to see the astral, the mental, and the causal. You don't perceive the astral directly. You don't perceive the mental directly. You don't perceive the causal plane directly. Hell, we don't even perceive the physical plane directly. We observe them through the mirror of the etheric plane, of Yasad. So what did he say here? He said, for example, you do not see your own face until you look into the mirror. At the same time, you say, "So this is what I look like." And you form an image of yourself. You form an image of yourself. You do that. Afterwards, even if you don't look into the mirror again, you retain that impression of yourself. He doesn't choose these metaphors just willy-nilly. Nuru says, sounds similar to the Buddhist concept of a bodhisattva, someone who chooses reincarnations even after complete liberation in order to teach the pathway of liberation to others. Yeah. Interesting stuff. IDKDKDF says, the mirror part sounds like Antar Mauna. Yeah. Indeed. Purusha is never involved with the manifest forms, but due to association with Prakriti, it is caught in the wheel of life and death because of identification. Identification. Purusha looks into this mirror and sees an image and becomes attached to it. I can even see like working on a farm with a bunch of chickens and picking out your favorite chicken. And you just can't help but watch over that chicken and think about it, and you probably feel bad if it was chosen to be cut up and cooked. And that feeling would probably last for a long time. Always retaining that memory. I mean, how many of us still remember our imaginary friends, hell, our childhood friends, or experiences that happened in the past? Check this out. Those same memories of things that are no longer existing still have an effect on us today because we haven't released them. So much so that they shape our personality today, don't they? All the things that happened to us in the 3rd grade, 5th grade, living with grandma, living with ma, living with dad, all these different experiences of childhood, because of our attachment to them and the emotional impact that they left, literally is what has shaped and created you as a person today. And it would be one thing to release those memories and let them go back into the void, but we literally hold them tightly. We hold them tightly and create an image with them. We use them as Play-Doh and Legos and building blocks to create and construct what we think we are. We're not even that. We're not even that. We've chosen these identities, consciously or unconsciously. They're deliberate. And the longer and tighter we hold on to them, the more difficult it is to let them go. This is why Purusha continues to be attracted to Prakriti and reincarnate, because we love what we see, or rather we're addicted. I would even say it's more like a drug. We're addicted. We're addicted to it. We're used to it. It's habit. It's ingrained habit pattern. Karma, samskaras, vrittis. Peace, Mad Bear. Vrittis. Wow. Similarly, Purusha is never involved with manifest forms, but due to association with Prakriti, it is caught in the wheel of life and death because of identification. Even now, if your consciousness was liberated due to contemplation and meditation, and you were to enter Samadhi, still the body would have to fulfill its span of life. The body contains those images and impressions which hold it together. This has been described in the Bhagavad Gita as Deha Buddhi. The personal experience of evolved beings is that the body still pulls them back. The body still pulls them back. The same images carry on, and life continues until those impressions are totally cleared. In this life, you may suddenly realize, oh, that is not me. Check this out. Then you may start erasing, but you cannot wipe the entire blackboard clean in one sweep, because the blackboard is always bigger than the duster. Although you may be free and have the right attitude, still, you can only eradicate one samskara or one karma at a time. It takes another sweep to remove another samskara or karma, and one life is necessary for each sweep of the board. In Jivanmukti, you return and bring with you your original clear slate. There is no involvement. You are simply wiping out the past. You are not creating new karmas. There is no involvement with Prakriti to create new karmas. I think that's something pretty heavy to think about. The chapter of page 6, the paragraph of page 68. Subtle bodies and gross bodies. Samkhya believes in two bodies, the Sukshma Sharira, which is the subtle body, and the Sthula Sharira, the gross body. And we know those two as the etheric body and the physical body, or the Pranamaya Kosha and the Manomaya Kosha. The gross body is composed of the Mahabhutas, whereas the subtle body is composed of the Tanmatras, Jnanendriyas, and Karmendriyas, Manas, Ahamkara, and Mahat. Like I just said, we don't experience the causal plane, the astral plane, or the mental plane directly. We don't even experience the physical plane directly. All we experience is the etheric plane. All we experience is the etheric plane. Now look at what he said here. Let's go back to page 51. He said, gross body is composed of the Mahabhutas. What are the Mahabhutas? The Mahabhutas are the gross elements. So the physical body is the tamasic body, right? Composed of earth, water, air, fire, and space. So what's the etheric body? What's the subtle body composed of? The Tanmatras, the Jnanendriyas, the Karmendriyas, Manas, Ahamkara, and Mahat. So that is 5, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18. Damn. So the Tanmatras, the Karmendriyas, the Jnanendriyas, and then Mahat, Ahamkara, and Manas. So all this other stuff is the etheric body and its effect on the Mahabhutas. The subtle body, he says here, are the Jnanendriyas, which is the capacity of perception, right? It's not actually the ears, but the capacity to hear. It's not actually the nose, he says, but the capacity to smell, right? But at the same time, everything to be heard, felt, saw, tasted, or smelt. This is why, if you're able to work with your etheric body, you can meditate and smell something that's not currently present. You can meditate and see something with your third eye. You can meditate and feel a sensation, right? You can taste a flavor. Have you been able to do that? Meditate and maybe smell something from your memory. That's possible because you're dealing with the capacity to smell and the thing to be smelt. They are both dealing with the subtle body, the etheric body, which is what you're accessing when you meditate. This is why, like I said, the etheric plane is the mirror plane that we use to interact with the astral, the mental, and the causal. We don't do it with the physical body. Physical body is just here. It's just a part of nature. The physical body doesn't actually even feel anything. It's the subtle body that feels through the physical body. Like if you just get that clear step right there, you'll start to understand how psychic ability works, how clairvoyance works, how even working with spirits work. Somebody asked me in a comment, wanted me to give him a definite empirical evidence of contacting spirits, right? That can be demonstrated in a laboratory. But it's like, you're already starting that question off incorrectly, because none of that even takes place in the physical. Peace, Stray Panther. Good evening. So again, Samkhya believes in two bodies, the Sukshma Sharira, which is the subtle body, and the Sthula Sharira, which is the gross body. The gross body is composed of the Mahabhutas, the five elements, whereas the subtle body is composed of the Tanmatras, the Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, Manas, Ahamkara, and Mahat. What we are seeing here is a three-tier concept. The Sthula Sharira, the gross body, is the body that takes birth and dies. The Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, is the body that transfers from life to life until all the karmas are exhausted. Purusha is the pure consciousness at the level of the realized soul. The subtle body and the body born of mother and father, together with the objects made of the gross elements, are specific. Of these, the subtle body is constant and continues to exist from one life to the next, whereas the gross body, born of parents, perishes. The emergent or subtle vehicle, linga, pre-exists all other bodies. It's unattached, It's unconfined, is constant, it's persistent, and is composed of tattvas, beginning with Mahat and ending with Tanmatras, intellect, ego, 10 capabilities, and the 5 subtle elements. It is free or devoid of experience, transmigrates and reincarnates, and is tinted or scented by the basic predispositions. Al Dickey says, makes perfectly good sense, bro. Thank you. Thank you. Because I don't know. I mean, I do. It makes perfectly good sense to me as well. But, I don't know if people are getting this. I sure hope so. But this just answers so many questions. It really does. It really, truly does. Let's continue. Consciousness, body, and mind are not all one unit. The Bhagavad Gita has also said that whenever the soul has to go into the realm of Prakriti, it does so via the Sukshma Sharira. The etheric body. So even when the soul has to go into the realm of Prakriti, it does so through the subtle body, through the etheric body. The Sukshma Sharira does not die when the gross body dies, but continues until it exhausts its karma. The etheric body doesn't die when the body dies. It's still bound to its karma. It continues until it exhausts its karma. You ever seen a video of those people who eat those frogs, right? Like a few of them been going around on Instagram, where they'll skin the frog and they'll have it on the plate, and like if they put like some lemon juice or like they dip it in some hot oil, you'll see the frog legs start kicking and jumping everywhere. The etheric body doesn't leave the body right away. Plenty of yoga books talk about this. The subtle body doesn't leave the physical body right away. That's why you'll have these frog legs and you dip them in hot oil or pour some lemon juice on them and they'll start kicking everywhere. All objects, the subtle body does not dissipate immediately. There's actually about 5 different pranas that animate the body, and they leave at different rates. One of them does leave right away, and that's why the body kind of goes limp and dies. But the other few karmas, they take time to dissipate from the body. That's why they have a tradition in India of burning the corpse to accelerate the process of these pranas exiting the physical body. But as he says here, the Sukshma Sharira does not die when the gross body dies, but continues until it exhausts its karma. You know, a lot of people say, oh, well, when someone dies, they're still around their body for 3 days. You know, and a lot of that is mostly hearsay, but it, damn near everything else, comes from this Vedic information. After the karmas are exhausted, it merges with consciousness, Purusha. Only then is Videhamukti, complete freedom from the cycle of birth and death, attained. The sequence of rebirth stops there. Newer mentioned the Bodhisattva. Lance Benefield says most of us are that, Bodhisattvas. Nehru says if we were Bodhisattvas, we would face every hardship with gratitude, as another opportunity to demonstrate non-reaction and equanimity. Hardship would be met even even-minded and peaceful, same as good fortune. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's an important distinction. I wouldn't go as far as to say we are all Bodhisattvas, because again, that's a level of understanding reality. Like what he said here, it's not any specific thing that you know, but it's how you manage your existence. And just like what Nuru said there, one who would be referred to as a bodhisattva, there's nothing to do with any physical or external or even something that you know. It's how life is approached and how one behaves physically and mentally. And just like you said, a bodhisattva would be able to face every hardship with gratitude as an opportunity to demonstrate non-reaction and equanimity. Damiante Infernus. Peace. Sir Panther says, so there's a connection with the subtle body and electricity. Absolutely. Absolutely. Electricity is one of many vehicles that the subtle body interacts with the physical plane with. Because remember what was said here. The physical body is only the lump of flesh. It's only this actual dense physical body, right? It's like a machine, like a vehicle. That's all the body is. Everything else in our experience is from the subtle body. The body itself doesn't feel pain. The body picks up stimulus, but it's the subtle body that interprets it as pain or pleasure. Because you got to remember, the subtle body does have the ability to rewire some of these inputs, right? There's plenty of people who have transformed their pain receptors into pleasure receptors. A lot of money to be made in that field. Some people get hurt for fun. Al-Diki says, yes, it's taught in the hadiths in Islam. It even says you can hear loved ones mourn for 3 days, just like you said. Yeah, that etheric body. Nuru says, check it. If a DNA strand is put in a jar of water surrounded by an antenna, if that signal sends radio signal at 7 hertz to second jar of water miles away, that DNA will replicate wirelessly in the second jar. Holy shit. So are you saying that it's fundamentally electric? Or not even electric, but it isn't something that is dense and physical. It's actually something that is wave-like in expression. Nuru says, this proves the ethereal transfer, wireless transmutation of all you are, DNA strand by strand, using just electromagnetic etheric frequency matching. Hercules, Hercules, Hercules. Yes, electricity and magnetism and ether are one fluid substance. I think that's what Franz Barton was trying to teach us in Initiation into Hermetics. But as we can see, these concepts are pretty difficult to simplify without losing the purity of the message. Hence why you have to go through initiation, right? Whoa. Okay. Society Ejects is very interesting. The soul has to go into the realm of Prakriti. It does so through the Sukshma Sharira. Yes. So we've just covered those two chapters. We'll get onto this one next week. We might even finish up next week. We'll see. But tune in tomorrow. We'll go over this a little bit more on Sunday's live stream. So I mentioned an announcement. I want to know what you guys think about this. What if we did a separate book study for NLP content? I'm thinking the book, Richard Bandler's Guide to Transformations, the Gold Book. I think that'd be pretty interesting. But it will be part of the YouTube membership, not for the public live stream. Because originally we were doing this book and the Kabbalah books through the membership, but kind of went public. But I think the NLP stuff would justifiably fall up under some private book studies. I'd love to do it. I think because what I've learned from doing these book studies is that it's actually been helping me to have to go through it chapter by chapter deliberately and slowly like that, so that I could really break it down and just pull out as much as I can from it. I have a pretty thorough understanding of how neuro-linguistic programming works, but I would certainly love to have an opportunity to go through it even more. So what do you guys think? I might open that up. Sure, we might even do it as soon as June. That might be the second book that we read alongside Mystical Kabbalah. If enough people are down for it, then we can do it. Newer says the experiments were done by Dr. Luc Montagny, a French geneticist. He passed away a few months ago. He did a wireless DNA transfer using 7 Hz radio waves, roughly the Earth's human resonance frequency. Luc Montagny. Transferring DNA from one jar to another just from radio waves? Proof. Oh. Let's see. Where's that book at? There it is. So this is the one that I'll be thinking of. Richard Bandler's Guide to Transformation. And we could probably end up doing like, I don't know, two, maybe 3 chapters a week. But people who come to me privately and ask how to get started in NLP, that's the first one that I recommend to them, because most of his other books, I would say, are slippery. Those are my words. Because even listening to him speak, I find myself falling asleep under hypnosis. He's an expert at what he does. At least in this book, it's pretty straightforward and not so much slippery. I don't know. I think it would greatly benefit. I almost did a podcast with somebody going into that book, but the timing wasn't really right. Anyways, Stray Panther says that will help with shadow work. Yeah. Hikati says there are more things out there on DNA, Travis. I believe it. It's just not my field, so I can't say much about it, but yeah, I'm with it. Nero says magic is just science we don't understand. Absolutely. So if you like just have a bunch of free time and you're literally just sitting around reading books all day, right? We talked today about the physical body and the etheric body. It would not be a bad idea for you to check out the book. Let me see if I have it over here. I have it, I just don't want to dig it out of this pile. Let me see, which one is it? I got stacks of books literally in every room. Dangerous. The hell, did I move it? Yeah, I might have moved it. Anyway, The Etheric Body by A.E. Powell. Get The Etheric Body by A.E. Powell. That's actually a really good book describing the etheric plane and how it operates, and also the astral body. Same author. Um, powerful information. It's kind of written older, so it's very wordy, but he really does cover just about everything. Covers just about everything. Um, and after reading a book like that, you can again, just like we know by now, you can tell that most people don't really know what they're talking about. They're just throwing words around. But the astral body is significantly different from the etheric body. The astral plane is significantly different from the etheric plane. Um, but yeah, like I said, if you got time, that would be a book that would give you what you need to know about that state of consciousness. I just got some more books, but whatever. Tomorrow, Sunday, live stream. Tomorrow afternoon. See you guys there. And also, I'm just going to keep reminding you because, like I said, I'm going to open it up this week or within the next 7 days before the event. Monday, by the way, I'm going to be speaking live in Atlanta. I hope you guys got your ticket so I can see you there. We can shake hands and give high fives and do the secret handshake. Um, Yo, Corporeal Chaos Consulting. Peace, peace, bro. Right on, right on. Yeah. So I hope y'all got your ticket. I hope you're gonna come out and say what's up. Um, Otherwise, I hope you got your virtual ticket so you can join in from the comfort of your own home. And also, be aware, just the story. As I've been working on my Goetia book, um, yeah, so I tried to start at the beginning, and the beginning is always like the warning and the prerequisite and how to protect yourself and all that stuff. And I started realizing quickly, like just my method. I don't focus on any like thing to protect you. You know what I'm saying? Like the circle and the triangle have an extremely symbolic meaning, right? We know from uh, the taught was that the triangle represents the fire, the Agni element, right? And that has to do with transformation. That has to do with the bridge between the unmanifest and the manifest. That's why we use the triangle of art and the Goetia, and we use the circle to represent the plane, the mental plane, right? But anyways, what I learned is like there's no physical object that can protect you from spirits. Really, the only protection that you have is a solid foundation, is a stable mind, is a mind that is not going to be overrun by your own fears and your own projecting and your own shadow, basically. So as I was working on that, I decided instead of me like writing half the book about shadow work, it might be a good idea to maybe come up with some sort of training, some sort of class on shadow work. And that's what I'm doing right now. It's going to be open here before the event, but we're going to get started after the event because I don't want to overload myself with a bunch of things. Um, but if this is something that you feel like is up your alley, this is something that you feel like is something that you've been wanting to work on for a while, definitely contact me. I'm going to be making a post about it for sure. But shadow work is on the table. Once we get that out the way, I think that that will establish a great foundation to work with spirits or do whatever. Because here's what I learned from working with Kabbalah and working with yoga. When you sit still and go into these deeper levels of yourself, you're going to be encountering yourself. You're going to be encountering the aspects of yourself that you ignored and you avoided, right? Because a lot of times we distract ourselves so that we don't have to face those things. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you sit still? They're going to come up to the surface. So the best protection against anything is to go ahead and neutralize, harmonize, and release these aspects, right? Because if you don't, and you start working with these spirits and all these Goetia, whatever you choose to do, these shadows, these unresolved aspects of the mind are going to make themselves apparent to you through whatever form you provide them with, right? That's the only fear. There's no fear of having to sell your soul. There's no fear of like your family members getting hurt by spirits. All of that is facilitated by an unstructured, chaotic mind. not the cool kind of chaos, but the chaotic mind that you have no control over and does what it wants. That's represented by the elements running the show and spirit being incompetent, right? Your individual ownership of the elements that form the body. You're not having any control over them. These things are going to kind of run haywire. So anyways, be on the lookout for that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here so I can get back to work. Universe says, don't believe your eyes. All that is unseen is what you are, an endless fluid medium of dark charge, which from time to time illuminates to see itself. It's just about tuning frequencies using samadhi. Yes, sir. Dark charge. Rashawn 33, peace, peace. Rashawn 33 says, Neuro be on point with examinations. Yes. All right. So again, I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much. Be good to yourselves. Don't run from yourself. Approach head on. And hopefully, I'll see you tomorrow. Even more hopefully, I'll see you on Monday in Atlanta. All right. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you guys. Peace.